journey to the promise. In this series, we will explore the lives of various characters in the Bible who are en route to their promise. The journey to the promise is often riddled with difficulty, but guess what? It's always reachable. I don't care how difficult things get. The promise is always within reach. To reach your promise, you have to travel through the wilderness. Let me say that again. To reach your promise, you have to travel through the wilderness. And the wilderness is not for the faint at heart. I don't know if you've ever been camping, really camping, not the luxurious camping, but really camping. And the wilderness is not for the faint at heart. When you are in the wilderness, things are going to be difficult. There are going to be some challenges. You're going to get cold at night. You're going to get hot at night. There's some difficulty is going to stop by your tent. So this journey that we are on, this journey to the wilderness is full of testing. It's a testing ground. It's a trial by fire. It is a sharpening stone. It is getting you ready for the promise that God has on your life. This journey that we are invited on to our promise. And let me stop right there. We all have a promise. I don't care how old or how young you might be. Everybody in here has a promise. God has a promise on your life. God has a promise on your life and has sent you an invitation to journey into your promise. The problem is too many of us are afraid to walk into our promise. We're scared to walk into our promise because it just looks too big. It looks too bold. And so we are afraid to walk into our promise. We're afraid that we're unable to endure the setbacks of the wilderness. We're afraid that the wilderness will break us and knock us down. And when we find ourselves in the midst of the promise, on the verge of on the edge of the wilderness, about to walk in, oftentimes we give up. We give up when trouble arises. We fall down when issues come about. See, 9 days ago, Hurricane Harvey made landfall in southeast Texas and devastated the region with a storm surge and excessive rainfall. The region is still feeling the impact of this storm and how nature can be unpredictable. 12 years ago, another storm made landfall on the coast of Mississippi and Louisiana called Katrina. And it disrupted millions of lives. People were scattered and sent away. People found themselves seeking to be rescued. Just like the storm that is occurring in southeast Texas. But don't you know, storms will come and disrupt your everyday flow. Storms are always brewing off the coast of your happiness. Beyond the shores of your peace, storms are always out there waiting to make landfall. They form in the seas of your discontent and the ocean of your dismay. Storms, I don't care how good you are, how often you come to church, all the ministries that you are a part of, but storms are going to come, and some of them are going to come with some floods. I stopped by to tell you, the storms are going to come. I don't care how good your life might be, how sold out for Jesus you might be. Don't you know that storms are going to come? I don't know how often they're going to come, but I can tell you they're going to come. See, the aftermath of the storm has been a part of the news cycle since landfall. Extreme flooding has crippled most of southeast Texas. And the people of the region, lives have been disrupted, been derailed and been disjointed. The events of the past week remind me that storms and floods will come without a warning. Don't you know that the storms in your life and the floods in your life will sneak up on you? See, at one moment you think it's headed another direction, but every once in a while it hits when you least expect it. When you least expect it. It made me question. How do you prepare for the flood? But it also asked me, who has flood insurance in here? See, many of us, we don't think we need flood insurance. We think that our homeowner's insurance covers everything, but I stopped by to tell you that you need some flood insurance. No matter how high you sit, no matter how high your house is on a hill, every once in a while, a metaphorical flood is going to stop by your residence. On this journey to the promise, I've realized that floods will come. Floods will come. You might have never experienced a literal flood, but most of us have experienced a metaphorical flood. Some of us are in the midst of a flood right now. Right now, we're in the midst of a flood. It seems like the waters of poor health are rising up on us. It seems like the river of financial setback is creeping at our door. It seems like the rains of hurts are pounding on our roof. We are in the midst of a storm, and many of us don't even know it. There's flood waters trying to sneak up on us. See, a flood is in the forecast. And you are wondering when you are going to get hit. You are wondering if you are covered. If you are covered. So can I tag this text flood insurance? Can I tag this text flood insurance? I know somebody looked at the program and said, where's Reverend Robinson going with this whole notion of flood insurance? In the text, Noah is told to prepare for the flood that is coming. God speaks to Noah and tells him to build an ark to carry him and his family in the times of flood. Now, let me stop right there. Noah had 125 years to prepare for the flood. And as many of us, we wish we had that long to prepare for the floods of our life. But tell you, a flood is on the way. I don't know what floodplain you sit on, so somebody just missed that. I don't know if you are on a 10-year floodplain, a 20-year floodplain, a 100-year floodplain, or a 1,000-year floodplain, but I know that you're on a floodplain, and a flood will happen. See, the text tells us the cause of the coming flood. And let me park right there. See, this is not a sermon that is condemning or casting judgment on anybody. In 2005, when the hurricane hit New Orleans, there were pastors that said that they deserved it because of the sin that they were living in. Let me say this. I am not saying that anybody deserves to go through a flood. Everybody goes through some type of flood. I don't care where you sit. I don't care what you do. I don't care how good you are or how bad you are. Everybody goes through a flood. All of us go through a flood. The text tells us that the cause of the flood, and it warns Noah that to prepare for the flood, that preparation is needed to ensure the safety of him and his family, and the rest of some of God's creation, to make sure that everything is all right. Now, if you turn over to the 6th chapter, you notice that God is just upset with man. Don't you know that God gets upset with you every once in a while? Every once in a while, God gets a little annoyed with us. But don't you know if it had not been for God's grace? If it had not been for God's grace, many of us would not be here today. Noah had 120 years to prepare for the flood that was coming, and the people of Southeast Texas, they only had days to prepare. See, the newscast told them that it might hit this way. We don't exactly know how hard it's going to hit, and so they found themselves in a flood zone before they knew it. I realized it is difficult to prepare for an unexpected challenge. It is difficult to predict what will happen in your life, when the flood will come. It is difficult to prepare because we don't know when the storms of life will hit. It is hard to know when mayhem, as Allstate says, will strike and show its ugly face. When mayhem will just sneak up on you. We don't know when the rivers will rise from upstream or downstream. It's difficult to know when the flood or the storm will come in your life. As I reflected on the events of this past week and the situation of my life, I realized floods will come and are a part of life. Floods will come and they are a part of life. See, we live in floodplains. I don't, as I stated before, I don't know what floodplain you sit on. Now, a floodplain is simply an area outside of a body of water that has a likelihood to flood. And so, according to the elevation, it means that the higher you up, the less likely you are to flood. And so, we all live in floodplains. We all live in floodplains, and there's a likelihood that a flood will come. In our lives, we may experience some type of flood. See, there are 4 causes of flood. Can I break this down for you? There are 4 causes of flood. The first type of flood, the first cause of floods is a coastal flood. It's called a surge flood. And a surge flood occurs when a body of water, normally an ocean or a sea, and there's a hurricane, and the water is pushed and it's a surge in, and this large body of water causes extreme tidal waves, and you've seen it when the water rushes over the embankment off the shore of a beach. That is a surge flood, and so it floods all that is near it or around it. Now, in our life, every once in a while, we experience a coastal surge. We experience a surge flood. We see in life, you might be walking by the beach and feeling all peaceful, but every once in a while, a surge will jump over the bank, and not what y'all just missed that. You just missed that. A surge will jump over the bank and flood you out. Wait. So now, here it is. In a surge flood, it's 3 things. See, some of the time, the surge flood causes minor damage. It causes minor erosion to the beach. Wait, let me say, it causes minor erosion to your spirit. Help me. It causes minor, but then every once in a while, it causes moderate erosion to the beach. I mean, your spirit, and you start to question God just a little bit more. And every once in a while, it causes major damage to your spirit. You know, when you just get mad at God and you and God ain't on speaking terms. When floods come, they're going to cause some damage. So coastal or a surge flood. And then there's a fluvial flood. A fluvial flood, I know somebody's wondering how to spell this, F-U-V-I-A-L. A fluvial flood or a river flood. A river flood is a flood. It is a flood. And fluvial comes from the Latin word, which means a body of water, a river or a lake. And so a fluvial flood is caused when a bank or a river rises above its crusting level and it spills over into the community. I wish you all were here. Don't you know, every once in a while, folk around you they probably will spill over and cause a flood in your, wait. That child that just acted up, every once in a while, they're going to spill over and cause a flood. Y'all not hearing me. And so it is when and so there are 2 types of fluvial floods, river floods. You see, there's a overbank flooding, and then there's a flash flooding. See, the overbank flooding, you can watch the water rise and know when to get out the way. You can watch what's going on around people around you, and you just get out the way. I'll talk to you next week. But every once in a while, there's a flash flood. And so a flash flood, the rain just starts pouring down, and so like in Texas, and so when 46 inches of rain hit the body of water, all it can do, that rain has nowhere to go, and so the water spills over in your life. And so you know those people, you don't know how they gonna act. You don't know what you're going to get that day. There's a flash flood, y'all. Maybe y'all ain't got people like that in your life. Maybe I just hang out with the wrong people. then there is what is called a surface flood or a pluvial flood. And so in that comes from the Latin word which essentially just means kind of rainfall. And so it is when rain comes down and causes a flood. And when rain comes down, and so when an intense amount of rain comes down, and the ground or whatever is around can't handle the downpour, and so intense rain saturates urban drainage. And so now I don't know if you've ever been in the community and you've been passing through a street and there's a big body of water. Well, the rain fell so fast that the drainage could not support it, which caused it to flood. Wait, hold on, y'all missing this. And so every once in a while in your life, there are going to be some surface floods. And you're going to go through some stuff, and you ain't going to be able to shake it off. You're not going to just be able to put it aside. It's just going to rise and rise. And before you know it, you're going to feel like you're drowning. I don't know if you've ever been there. And then every once in a while, in that surface flood, there's this thing called runoff flooding. Runoff flooding is when water runs down from a higher elevation. Wait. So y'all missing this. So here it is. In Washington, it's folk that's causing, y'all missed that. It's causing runoff floods. So you got a president who's sitting high and don't care what. Y'all not hearing me. So you got people that sit in Congress that don't care what's coming down. Okay. And so every once in a while, you're going to find yourself in the midst of a flood. You're going to find yourself in the midst of a flood. And then the final one is man-made flooding. You know, man-made flooding. And there are three categories of man-made flooding. The first category one, is when, let's say, your sink runs over. Or your bathtub runs over. The water is clean. You ain't worried about it. You're going to throw some towels down and all of that stuff. And it's okay. But the water ran over because you forgot to cut it off. Wait. Hold up. The stuff that's happening in some of our lives, we forgot to cut the water off. We forgot to cut it off. But then the category two is when water, so you put dishes in the dishwater, or it clothes in the washing machine, and something gets clogged, and it starts running over. Well, this isn't necessarily clean water. This is dirty water, and so now you got some dirt all in y'all missing me. And so, and then the third category is what they call black flooding, and so it's when the sewage system overflows, your toilet overflows, and so you wind up with a whole bunch of it in your life. I don't know if you ever had some it in your life, but it don't smell good, and you just can't clean that up. It takes some stuff that you need to do to make sure it's cleaned up properly. But I ask, how did Noah and his family weather the flood? What did they do to make it through the flood? Even in the midst of the storm, the rain falling and the wind blowing, how did they make it out of the storm? Floods are going to come. But we just need to know how to get through the flood. If you find yourself in the midst of the flood, the first thing you need to do is you need to remember. You need to remember. Verse 1 in chapter 7, basically God says, I got you, Noah. Wait. Say, all that stuff that you've been through, when God had you, all you got to do is remember. God had you then, so therefore, God has you now. Wait. When your heart was broke, God had you then, God has you now. The last time you were sick, God had you then, and God has you now. You just need to remember that God has you. Noah is told to go into the ark because God has found favor in him. God has found favor in you. That's why God is trying to get you to your promise. I said, Noah had 120 years to build the ark, to prepare for the flood. But don't you know that in 2 Peter it talks about how Noah sought to warn the people? People will try to make you forget how God had you back then. People will try to make you forget that God is not on your side. People will try to make you forget how God has been with you. I'm reminded that God is forever with you. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles from long ago, as it says in Psalm 77 and 11. You got to remember how God has brought you through. In the midst of your flooding situation, you just got to remember how God has had you. The next thing it says, the text tells us, you got to resist the desire to panic. Don't you know? See, in the midst of a flood, you're going to panic. In the midst of difficult situations, you're going to panic. In the midst of a storm, your heart rate is going to rise. Your blood pressure is going to rise. When you find yourself in the midst of some difficulties, just resist. Just resist the desire to panic. In that 16th verse in the 17th chapter, it says that God shut them in. Wait. So in the midst of your panic, I want you to remember that God shut you in. Wait, hold on. So if God closed the door, that means anything that can harm them can't get in. It's kept out. So God has kept them. So resist the desire to panic. Resist all of those thoughts that run through your mind. I know it's going to be some doubt. Doubt is to be human, but resist that desire. I'm reminded of Mark 4:39 when Jesus was on the boat and his disciples were there, and mind you, some of them were fishermen, and a storm started brewing, and Jesus, in his calm, cool, collective self, he just simply got up. He said, he rebuked the wind and the waves, and he said, quiet. Be still. Don't you know, in the midst of your difficult situation, God is just saying, quiet. Be still. I don't know what you're going through, but God is saying, quiet. Be still. I don't know what your diagnosis might be, but God is saying, quiet. Be still. I don't know if they gave you a pink slip, but God is saying, quiet. Be still. I don't know if your family's acting up, but God is saying, quiet. Be still. Whatever your storm might be, God is saying, don't panic. I got you. Be quiet and be still. And then I'm almost out your way. I'm almost out your way. But then the text, I see in the 18th verse, it talks about the water is rising. And so it tells us to resist the desire to panic. It tells us to remember how God has been with us, but it also tells us to roll with the waves. Wait, hold on. See, the thing is, if you're in the midst of a storm, one of the reasons that big ships don't sink is because they're able to roll with the waves. You have to be able to roll with the waves. When the water starts to rise, you can't fight the water. You can't start thundering in the fly. You have to run. You just relax and just allow the water to lift you. It says that the boat rolls with the water. The boat didn't struggle. The boat, wait, hold up. In the midst of your situation, Satan is trying to drown you. But just be quiet, be still, and rise with the water. And then, even in the midst of it, so here it is. Noah is promised that his family will be saved. But don't you know some of the time storms come, waters rise, so it can take you to your promise? Hold up. So they in the midst of a storm. The water rises. They're on the boat. And God is taking them to their promise. Y'all still not getting this. See, you in the midst of your situation. And you mad at God. But guess what? God is preparing you and taking you to your point. Y'all really not getting this. So you just got fired, but God has already worked out another job. Well, y'all still not getting it. You going through some financial difficulty, and you about to lose your home, but God has already worked. Oh, y'all still not. In the text, they rose, and then it said that they wound up on Mount Ararat, in a whole nother place, because God was taking them somewhere else. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what your storm might be, but just live in the storm and allow God to take you wherever God is seeking to take you. See, after the flood hits, you have to recover. You have to recover, and I had to check on this. I'm almost out your way. I'm almost out your way. But in the recovery process, there are some things you got to do. So after Hurricane Katrina, I moved to Louisiana because I wanted to do something to impact that community. And so I moved back, and I lived in Baton Rouge. And for a long time, you couldn't go into New Orleans, into particularly certain parts of New Orleans. And so me and the team that I was a part of, we would go in and we would tear down and do stuff in different homes. And one of the first things we did when we got to a site, in the midst of recovering from a flood, you got to put on protective gear. Hold on. You got to cover yourself. Wait, y'all listen to that. You got to. So we will put on these hazmat suits and these ventilators, and we will cover our face and our eyes and all of these things. But you got to cover yourself. In 1 Peter 1 and 18, you have to cover yourself. You have to realize that you're covered by the precious blood of Christ. See, in the midst of your storm, don't you know that you're covered by the blood? Wait, in the midst of whatever you're going through, you can walk into any flooded situation. You can recover from any flooded situation because you're covered in the blood. You're covered in the blood. But then it said you got to cover yourself, but then you also have to, you got to go in. And when a place is flooded out, you got to clean and salvage stuff. Wait, hold on. See, in your flooded situation, you holding on to some stuff. Wait, you trying to hold on to some stuff that you don't need to hold on to. Anytime a situation has flooded out, you got to go in, you got to gut some stuff, and you got to throw it out. Wait, hold on. See, there's some relationships you got to throw out. There's some habits you got to throw out. There are some things that you got to throw out of your life. You got to throw out. You got to clean out. Now I'm reminded of the man who had leprosy, and he came to Jesus and he said, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Don't you know, in the midst of your flood, after the flood, if you just allow Jesus to make you clean, you're going to be all right. If you just allow Jesus to make you clean, you're going to be all right. But then, I'm almost out your way, but then it says after a flood, one of the first things you should do is check your insurance policy. One of the first things you should do is check your insurance policy. I stopped by to tell somebody that you need some blood insurance. Wait. I didn't say flood insurance. I said you need some blood insurance. Wait. Okay. Y'all just missed that. You need some blood insurance in your life. Somebody is walking around and they are not insured. They are not insured because they are not covered by the blood. I stopped by to tell you. You know, State Farm says, they said, like a good neighbor, I would say God is there. State Farm says, wait. If Jesus lives wherever you live, I wish you all would hear me this morning. You need some blood insurance. Allstate said, you're in good hands. I'm about to tell you that you are in God's hands. I'm about to tell you that you are in God's hands. got your back. Wherever you belong, God is with you wherever you belong. Prediction, you know, Jesus is like a rock. Let Jesus be your rock. And don't you know, Nationwide says, Nationwide says they're on your side, but I stopped by to tell you that God is on your side. God is on your side. Only God gives you the option to name your price. God gives you the option to name your price. And the name is Jesus. I'm about to sit down, you know, USAA. It says, you know what it means. We know what it means to serve. Don't you know that God knows what it means to serve you? American Family says all your protection is under one roof. Don't you know that all your protection is under one roof? It says at these times, at times like this, God sets himself apart. I don't know what you're going through, but don't you know at times like this, God sets God's self apart? I don't know if you have blood insurance or not, but don't you know we're giving out policies right here? And if you're not covered, it can lead to spiritual ruin. If you're not covered, it can lead to spiritual ruin. I'm not here to try to scare you into serving God. I'm not here to try to frighten you into serving God. But don't you know when you're covered by the blood? That's all. That's all you need. Things ain't gonna always be easy. Floods are gonna come. But when you're covered by the blood, you know you're going to recoup everything you lost. I don't know how much somebody was praying with me. You're going to recoup everything you lost. See, it says that if you have federal flood insurance, you can only recoup $250,000 of whatever you lose. But don't you know with blood insurance, I don't care what you lost, but God is going to always give you exactly what you need. Stand to your feet. Stand to your feet. We open the doors of the church. Somebody might be looking for some blood.